Hello, and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News channel. Today we're going to talk about stocks, the virus, and cures. And is 30K DOW and 20% unemployment a possibility, or is that just something that they're artificially inflating the market with? So, before we start, I'd like to remind you that I do live streams every day. If you want to join me, check out the link in the description and the comments. I'm streaming on my backup channel, the Good Free Photos channel. And I also have another video channel called Crypto Daily Updates, and that's also in the comments and the description. Also, join my Twitter. If I ever get deleted from YouTube for some odd reason, you can always find me there, and I will actually update you on the case, and we'll be in this thing together. So, is 30K DOW and 20% unemployment a thing? I believe there's actually a chance because people are getting, despite the fact that there's massive unemployment right now because of the virus, I think it's 20% or more in reality right now. 5 million people just filed for more unemployment. And I think on May 1st, we're going to see the full scale of this unemployment. I think it's going to be above 20% temporarily. Now, unlike the Great Depression, this is not going to last for like 2 years, 20% unemployment. It will probably bounce back really fast whenever we reopen the country. However, the Dow is going up because, the company Gilead actually has some kind of advancement on a cure. Now, Gilead has actually come out and said it's like anecdotal evidence and it should not be taken as like real evidence that we have a cure, and they're not anywhere close. I think that's Gilead's actual statement. But there is some hope that the medicine actually has treated some of the most severe symptoms, and patients were discharged from the hospital in a month. So that is quite good news for us as a country, and the stock market could bounce back up because of news like that. We're also going to take a look at some of the stocks that you might want to keep a track of that are working on cures like this, and if they do happen to strike the jackpot in terms of their stock price, in terms of the cure, their price will actually go up. But the thing is, I think people can get so high on the sentiment that a cure might actually be coming. They could actually pump up the market 3 or 4,000, maybe even 5,000 more points and go to 30,000 Dow. But I think that's kind of a fake out for the economy because we know what the clinical trials are like for these kind of drugs. This is like early phase anecdotal evidence. Gilead has tried to tamper our expectations, and other companies are working as well. But we need to go through extensive human trials before we can actually bring this thing to market, because we don't want something to come to market that could actually either hurt people or really is just completely ineffective. And plus, there is always the chance that the virus can mutate, as Fox News and several other news companies have actually mentioned. So I don't think we should get our hopes up yet in the next 2 or 3 months for a cure, because I don't think that's really that reasonable to expect one of these pharma companies to come up with a cure that's released to the public within the next 2 or 3 months. I think 6 months, maybe 5 or 6 months, is probably the fastest you can actually hope for a cure to come out of the market, because they have to go through extensive human trials, because they have to check out everything. And the FDA in the United States is very strict about these things for good reason. In Western countries, the FDAs are always very strict for good reason. They might try to speed up a little bit because of the COVID-19 thing and because it's emergency, but overall, there's a very good reason for a slow, drawn-out process for the testing and cure of COVID-19 and other diseases by the FDA. So that's kind of like the thing for right now. So we could actually get a situation where we have like a hyper pump because people get so excited on the sentiment of a cure, and the Dow goes back up to close to its all-time high, but unemployment is still extremely high because the country is still closed. So it is possible we get 29, 30K and a 20% unemployment. I think if we do that, that'll inevitably drop back down, because that's not sustainable. You can't have like a fifth of the country unemployed and have such high stock market prices. I think that's a total fake out. Now, I don't really know where the Dow is headed, but once people start running out of money, and the $1,200 check isn't really going to keep everyone, funded for very long. I think they'll have to have more stimulus checks, and the state of the economy will eventually catch up to people. I think the stock market should actually be a little lower than where it is right now because of the unemployment we have. If you look at the economic status of the United States, the markets should not be quite as high as they are now, because, when we dropped to 18,000, we actually had significantly less unemployment than we have now. We have more unemployment. I think the stimulus package, plus like some hopes for a cure, and like the curve starting to flatten out in many of the most serious parts of the United States, definitely had a big hand to play in the stock market rallying over 50% from the bottom. But I really don't think, 50% in terms of like how much it lost and how much it gained back. I really don't think it's sustainable. And a cure, I think, is a few months away because of the federal procedures with the FDA and how much time it takes for them to make sure that the thing works and it is not harmful to people. So that's what I actually think about 30K Dow and 20% unemployment. I think it's actually possible that could happen, but I think it would be kind of a fake stock market that's actually been floated up that high. Plus, we got a lot more national debt now because they had to write the stimulus check and stuff. I'm not too worried about that because the government basically has an infinite money printing machine. And as long as there's demand for USD, the USD isn't going to hyperinflate. And there's a lot of demand for USD right now, especially from the international markets and the domestic markets. But especially the international markets, a lot of countries want that US dollar right now in these times of crisis. So let's actually go over some of the stocks that you might want to look at. And this is from CNBC, so it is from mainstream media. But generally, like CNBC, when they actually talk about this stuff for stocks, they're pretty good and they're legit. So the first one you want to look at, Johnson & Johnson, and these companies now I'm going to mention are the ones that are actually looking for vaccines. Johnson & Johnson, they're one of the leading pharmaceutical companies working on a vaccine, and it's aiming to produce 600 million and 900 million doses of its own pending cure by the end of the first quarter of 2021. But note the timeline, end of the first quarter of 2021. That is like a year away. So they're targeting a year off for a coronavirus vaccine. And so any hope of a vaccine coming in the next 2 months just is not going to happen for J&J. Moderna is another one you want to look at. They also have clinical trials of 20 to 25 healthy volunteers, and they have several $100 million in funding. But I also think they're kind of on the same timeline as J&J because, all these vaccines have to go through a very thorough process. So J&J, Moderna, and the third one obviously is Pfizer. They're also very well known, and they want to start testing patients. They hope to start testing patients in the summer of 2020, which is about 3 months off. Like they're going to start tests, but I don't think they can actually get the actual product out onto the broad market probably until at least fall or winter 2020. So we're expecting 6 to 9 months for a delivery time. J&J has about a 12-month delivery time. I'm guessing Pfizer, Moderna, at the earliest, maybe like a 6 to 9 months delivery time. And that's being very optimistic, knowing how slow the process actually works. So those are the vaccine companies, J&J, Moderna, and Pfizer. And you also have a couple of others like Norwax and other, and like Inovio Pharmaceuticals. So remember those, J&J, Pfizer, Moderna, like Novavax and Inovio Pharmaceuticals. Now, treatments actually might come before the vaccine, and there's also really fierce competition in those. A few of the largest companies working on treatments include Gilead Sciences, Eli Lilly, and a partnership between Regeneron and Sanofi. So Gilead is the one that's been making all the news. And they actually said on April 10th that a cohort of 53 patients with severe cases of the virus received treatment through a compassionate use program, and that a majority of those treated demonstrated clinical improvement and no new safety signals were identified. So they did some limited trials, but they're going to have to do more trials, and it's going to be a few months at least before it comes out of the broad market because they have to get FDA approved. All that stuff I'm sure will be fast tracked, but these trials do take a good bit of time. They have to do like double blind trials and stuff like that, and these aren't easy to do. So at least a couple more months. The country is definitely going to start opening back up before these treatments actually come online. And they say like we shouldn't get our hopes up too much because of very, very limited trials. They're seeing rapid recoveries, which is always good in patients, but they have to be very, very careful. So they actually have 1.5 million individual doses on hand, and that's enough to supply 140,000 patients. And their timeline is they aim to produce enough doses to provide treatments for more than 500,000 patients by October and another 500,000 by the end of 2020. So we're looking at more towards the end of this year before it's actually available to the mass market. They have, obviously there's unprecedented demand, but they need to get more results before they can actually push this out. Otherwise, if there's something bad in there, we won't catch it. So they need to do more clinical trials and more research. So there's Regeneron and Sanofi, and they're French multinational pharmaceuticals. And they are focused on clinical trials to see whether their arthritis drug, Kizara, could treat COVID-19 symptoms. So the research seeks to determine whether a class of drugs already on the market. So this is already on the market. So this actually, if the clinical trials, which probably will take a few months, are successful, then you can actually get this because this has already been approved and it's actually on the market. Some doctors think that drugs can suppress the immune system, might be helpful for limiting the body's destructive response to the novel virus. So there's different ways that these pharmaceuticals can actually work, but they're actually testing a drug that's already on the market. And if it's actually successful, then obviously, it can come onto the market a lot faster. And then there's Eli Lilly. So they're working on they're working with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases to see if FDA approved rheumatoid arthritis drug could serve as another option. So this one's already FDA approved. It helps with rheumatoid arthritis. And if this actually is shown successful for COVID-19, it can also come very, very quickly onto the market. So that's actually what we're actually looking at right now. The timeline's probably going to be at most, like midsummer. The study by Eli Lilly, it's going to start this month and will be extended in Europe and Asia, and there's going to be some results by the end of June. So the company theorizes that their anti-inflammatory effects could curb the body's reaction, which would help prevent some more bodily damage by the own immune system. So the thing is, if we get some results by the end of June, they have to verify anything. It's going to be at least a month or two after that, I think, before the virus hits the market. So late summer, I think, is the earliest that you can actually see a cure possibly come out. And that is if it actually proves successful. And we don't really have any news about the Eli Lilly drug yet. So that's what we have for today. Vaccines, probably very late this year or next year. Treatments, possibly by the end of the summer, early fall. So we still got 3, 4, 5 months before anything real comes out onto the market that can actually help people onto the broad market. And we're going to suffer a lot. We're going to suffer a lot in terms of economy until then. So right now, I do think if we do reach 32K, it is probably an economic fake out, and it doesn't address the real underlying problem of the large amount of unemployment. I think the country opening is going to be the main thing, but the thing is, the opening up, as I've heard from governors, is going to be very slow. So we're not going to recover from this. We're not going to all of a sudden just recover from this. And before any of these drugs come out, there is always chance for a relapse of a second wave. So people need to be careful about the market. Yes, you might want to scoop up some cheap stocks right now, but remember, we can actually go dip back down. I'm not really sure if 18,000 was the bottom or not, but remember these pharmaceutical companies, Eli Whitney, Regeneron, and Sanofi. Gilead Sciences, and you also want to look at Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna. So that's kind of the report for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, and hit that bell notifications button. Remember, join me on Twitter. So if I ever get banned from YouTube for whatever reason, I can tell everyone to move to a different platform if that ever happens, or we can actually petition YouTube to get my channel back. So that is the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.